Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 256, Healthier Fast Food. Is it possible? Welcome back to another episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. I'm Shelley Rael, registered dietitian nutritionist. And today I want to talk about something that's probably part of most people's lives at some point, whether they want to admit it or not. And that is, of course, fast food. And specifically today, I want to address, can fast food actually be part of a healthy eating pattern? Now, I can already imagine this. I have people who have actually not been very well at hiding their reaction and saying, well, you're a dietitian. Aren't you supposed to tell me not to eat fast food? You don't eat fast food, do you? And I have to say, no, I'm not going to tell you you're not supposed to eat fast food. And yes, I do eat fast food. And I want to make sure this is clear. Fast food restaurants exist. People eat there. Sometimes people eat there because they enjoy it. Sometimes they're traveling. Sometimes they're working a long shift. Sometimes they're driving to kids' activities. Sometimes they're between appointments. Sometimes they're exhausted and hungry and need food. And sometimes you just want a burger or a chicken sandwich. And that's real life. That is real life. And like I said, whether people want to admit it or not, people can eat fast food and not be horrible people and not be unhealthy. Because I want to make this clear. Nutrition has to exist in real life, real world nutrition. So we want to just address some realities here about fast food. Now, I do want to mention that this builds a little bit off of last week's episode about restaurant menu labeling, but you don't have to have listened to that. And if you didn't listen to it or didn't remember, restaurant menu labeling is where restaurants have to post the calorie numbers on their menus. So whether it's on the printed menu, the drive-thru, the menu board inside the restaurant, the calorie numbers have to be there. And there's specific criteria for that. So if you didn't listen to that episode, go back and listen to that once you're done with this one. So today, I'm going to take it a step further and just say, if you're going to eat fast food, are there ways to make a choice that is a little more balanced? And yes, there is. But notice the word that I use there, or the phrase I use there, is more balanced. I'm not going to tell you that a fast food restaurant is suddenly a healthy food store because you ordered the grilled chicken sandwich instead of fried chicken. And I'm also not going to try to tell you that every item on the fast food menu is nutritionally disastrous. There is a lot of middle ground here. So that's where I want to spend the time here in this episode, is focusing on that middle ground. Now, first up, this is something that gets lost when we're talking about fast food. A fast food meal is one meal, not your entire diet. Now, I have met people where it is their entire diet, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, it's not. But I just want to make it clear, when people have fast food, most of the time, it's not something that is a daily thing. So if you stop at a drive-thru today and order a burger, fries, and a milkshake, you've eaten a burger, fries, and milkshake. You haven't ruined your health. You haven't undone everything you've done before the meal, and you don't need to make up for it tomorrow by skipping meals or eating nothing but salads. At the same time, thinking about that person who eats fast food for most of their meals, most days, the overall pattern is going to be different from occasionally grabbing something at a drive-thru. And I want to make that clear. That's something I'm going to keep coming back to. I say this in a lot of episodes. We need to look at patterns, not individual foods or meals in isolation. So if fast food is an occasional part of your life, I don't think you need to spend a lot of mental energy worrying about whether that one meal was healthy enough. But if you are eating fast food regularly and want to make some changes, there's some pretty practical things that you can do here. So what might make fast food more balanced, a fast food meal rather, more balanced? Well, there isn't one universally accepted definition of a healthy fast food meal. And that's because, of course, everyone is different. Everyone's needs are different. But if someone asks me how they can make a fast food meal healthier, I generally look for opportunities to reduce some of the things that can add up quickly. And this can be things like excess calories, saturated fats, added sugars, sodium, and I look for opportunities to add or emphasize things like protein, fiber, fruits and vegetables, and a big one here, reasonable portions. And that doesn't mean every meal needs to check every single box. Fiber at fast food restaurants tend to be a little skimpy there. And you don't need to stand at the counter doing a nutrition analysis before you order your lunch. It's simply knowing where some of the biggest opportunities are. And one of the biggest opportunities is portion size. So starting with portion size, fast food portions can be pretty large. And when you order a combo meal, you may end up with considerably more food than you actually wanted or actually needed. You might order burger, fries, and a drink because that's how the meal is packaged. But do you actually want the large fries? Do you actually want the largest drink? Do you even want fries? And this is where I think the menu labeling that I addressed last week can be useful. You can look at the numbers and see what you're getting and then decide. Maybe you do want the large fries, and that's fine. But maybe you realize the smaller fries are plenty, also fine. One of the easiest changes you can make is simply choosing a smaller portion. A single burger instead of a double, small fries instead of a large, a regular drink instead of the biggest size on the menu, a smaller dessert. You're still eating the food you wanted, you're just eating less of it, and sometimes that's all you need to do. And do you really want the combo? That's something I encourage people to consider. Combo meals are convenient. And they're marketed as a bargain. On some menu boards, that's all you see is the combo meal. And yes, financially, they may be a better deal than ordering all those things individually, but nutritionally, you may end up with considerably more food than you intended to eat. Maybe you just wanted the sandwich and you didn't necessarily want the fries. But maybe you do want the fries, but you don't want a sugary drink. Or maybe you want the sandwich with a side salad. Yes, there are people like that out there. Ordering items separately gives you more control of what actually ends up in your meal. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't order the combo. If you want the combo, order the combo. But the point is simply to consider whether you're ordering something because you actually want it or that's how the restaurant puts the meal together. And that's a useful question in a lot of situations, not just fast food. There's a lot of times where if I order a sandwich at a fast food, I specify, I just want the sandwich. I want this sandwich and just the sandwich, nothing else. Because I don't need anything else. The other thing is I want to encourage people to do is pay attention to the beverage. This is one of the easiest places to make a change. Sometimes people look at the food and completely forget about the drink, and they have regular soda or sweet tea or lemonade or fruit punch or frozen drinks or specialty coffee beverages. And sometimes people think if it's not soda, it doesn't have sugar in it. But yeah, lemonade and sweet tea, of course, and fruit punch and those frozen drinks and those specialty coffee beverages do contain a substantial amount of added sugars without making you feel very full. So if you're looking for an easy way to change the nutrition profile of a fast food meal, look at the beverage. Water's an obvious option. It kind of sucks if we have to pay for water. Unsweetened tea is another one. Sparkling water can work, and you may not realize it, but people can just get the sparkling water from the soda fountain. Some people prefer diet beverages, or here's another thing, you can simply order a smaller regular soda. So again, this doesn't have to be an all or nothing decision. If you enjoy regular soda, you don't have to declare that you're never drinking again. maybe you just don't need 32 ounces of it. Another place to look at is the extras. And that's another place where things can add up. And think about all of the extras that can come with a fast food meal. Extra cheese, bacon, mayonnaise-based sauces, special sauces, large amounts of dressing. And these things by themselves, in and of themselves, aren't inherently bad, but they do contribute additional calories, saturated fat, and sodium. So you might decide that one slice of cheese is enough rather than adding an extra. Maybe you use less dressing. If you get the full packet of dressing, you don't need to use the whole thing. Maybe you skip the bacon, or maybe you keep the bacon because that's part of the sandwich you really enjoy. And again, the point is not to eliminate everything. It's about being intentional about your choices. Let's address fried versus grilled. And this is one area where the difference sometimes can be fairly substantial. Fried foods often contain more calories and fat because of the breading and the cooking process. Many fast food restaurants offer grilled chicken or other grilled options. And if your goal is to reduce calories or saturated fat, a grilled option can be a useful and decent choice. But again, I want to make sure this doesn't turn into a nutrition rule. Fried food is not forbidden. If you want fried chicken, have fried chicken. If you eat it occasionally, it's not going to determine your health. I rarely have fried chicken, so when I do eat fast food, it's the fried chicken sandwich. And if you're looking at the two options and want to choose one that's generally lower in calories and fat, the grilled is usually the better choice. But again, think of the overall context of your overall eating pattern and what else you're ordering. And then let's not forget sodium. Sodium's probably one of the nutrients people overlook when they're looking at fast food. They may be thinking about calories, they may be thinking about protein, they may be thinking about whether there are any vegetables in there, or they may not be thinking of any of these things, but sodium can add up quickly. The sandwiches, the fries, the processed meats, cheese, sauces, dressing, and other components can all contribute sodium. So what can you do? Well, some of the things I've already mentioned. Smaller portions can help. You can limit any extra sauces. You can choose grilled proteins rather than processed meats in certain situations. You can skip the bacon if you don't really want it. You can use less dressing. And you don't need to add additional salt packets. And since I'm addressing salt right here, I want to clear up one misconception. Sea salt is not lower in sodium than regular table salt. Salt is salt when we're talking about the sodium content, and the fact that one comes from the sea doesn't make it a low sodium food. That's marketing. Sea salt all originated from the sea at some point. Okay, let's talk about the salads. This is one of my favorite examples because a lot of times people often assume that if something's called a salad, it's automatically healthier. And not necessarily. A salad can be absolutely a nutritious choice, and there's some great salads out at some of these fast food restaurants. But consider what it actually is, what's actually in it. You could have lettuce and vegetables with grilled chicken, or you could have lettuce with fried chicken, bacon, cheese, croutons, and a large amount of dressing. And those are two very different meals. Neither one needs to be labeled good or bad. The point is to simply look at the entire meal rather than the name on the menu. A salad isn't automatically healthier because it says salad. A burger isn't automatically unhealthy because it says burger. Look what's actually in the food. And there's some of these restaurants where I do love their salads, and it's got different variety of foods in there, and I get them because I like them, not because they're necessarily healthier, although it's nice to get some veggies in. Now let's talk about protein, because right now it feels like our entire world is supposed to revolve around protein. Not that there was ever a war on protein, despite what some people may say. Protein has always been important. In these days, though, it seems every Food seems to have a protein version: protein cereal, protein cookies, protein chips, protein popcorn, protein coffee, protein everything. And yes, protein is important, but you don't need to turn every single meal or every single food into a protein maximizing exercise. Many fast food meals already contain protein from meat, chicken, eggs, cheese, beans, or other ingredients. And if you're choosing between meals, look for a reasonable protein source that can be useful. Remember, we're looking at the whole meal. Protein is one part of nutrition, but so are carbohydrates, so are fats, so is fiber, so are vitamins and minerals. So again, it's the overall pattern of what you're eating. Now, let's talk about real life, real world nutrition, fast food and real life. This is probably one of the most important parts of this for me. People live real lives. You may be traveling, you may have worked a 12-hour shift, you may be taking your kids from school to soccer to dance or something else. You may be driving across the state. You may be at an airport. You may be between meetings, you may have limited food options, or you may simply be hungry. And sometimes fast food is an option, maybe the only option, maybe the most reasonable option. And I don't think in nutrition education we should pretend otherwise. So instead of thinking or saying don't eat fast food, I would much rather teach someone how to navigate eating fast food. Because once you know how to look at a menu, you have more choices. You may choose a smaller portion. Maybe you choose water. Maybe you add some fruits and veggies in there somehow. Maybe you skip the extra sauce. Maybe you choose grilled instead of fried. Maybe you order exactly what you want and what you're in the mood for in that moment. All of those things can be reasonable choices depending on the situation. And sometimes, let's face it, sometimes you just want the food. So I want to make sure there's room for this too. Let's say you're traveling and you stop at McDonald's. I have no problem ordering a sausage McMuffin with egg and moving on with my day. My husband likes to say, nobody's going to McDonald's for healthy food. Maybe not. But I also think that we need to not turn that into a moral judgment about the food. McDonald's is the scapegoat for all fast food. There's lots of fast food restaurants out there, you know that. We don't need to turn it into a moral judgment about the food or the people who are going to those restaurants. I can eat that sausage McMuffin with egg, continue on my day. I'm not going to skip lunch just because I had a McMuffin. I may be still full because of that McMuffin. I'm not going to exercise for an extra hour because I ate fries. I'm not going to decide that my day is ruined. It is just food. And the nutrition exists in the context of real life. So, is fast food healthy? And that's not the question we should be asking. Is fast food healthy? People ask me that. Is fast food healthy? That's too broad. The better question is, can I make a choice at this restaurant that works reasonably well for me right now? And usually the answer is yes. Maybe your priority is reducing sodium. Maybe you're looking for more fiber. Maybe you're trying to get a reasonable amount of protein. Maybe you're simply hungry and want something that will keep you satisfied. Maybe you're traveling and just want a quick breakfast. Your needs and priorities can change from one meal to the next, and that's okay. And I want to end this with this part here. Don't let one meal become a nutrition emergency. If you eat fast food once, you don't need to compensate. If you eat a higher calorie meal, you don't need to skip the next meal. You don't need to skip the next meal. If you're not hungry, you can, of course. If you order fries, you don't need to exercise them off. If you choose a salad, you don't get extra nutrition points. And if you order a burger, your healthy eating pattern isn't ruined. One meal is one meal. Your health is influenced by what you do repeatedly over time. So if fast food is an occasional part of your life, enjoy it and move on. If it's a regular part of your life and you want to make some changes, there are plenty of simple ways to do that. And that is look at portions, look at beverages, pay attention to extras, consider the preparation methods, think about sodium. Include fruits, vegetables, and fiber when they're available. And most importantly, look at the overall pattern. You don't have to find the healthiest thing on the menu. You don't have to avoid fast food completely. You can simply make a choice that makes sense for you in that moment. And sometimes it might be a grilled chicken sandwich and water. Sometimes it might be the burger and fries. Both can exist in a real person's life. That's the whole point of real world nutrition. Nutrition has to work in the real world. So I hope you got something useful out of this episode. Stop with judging yourself and others that choose to eat at fast food restaurants. You don't know what other people do in their lives. You know what you do in yours. So use those tools as you see fit. You don't need to use any of them. You can use all of them. You can use some of them. All right. With that, I would encourage you to share this with somebody who might be judgmental about fast food. And I'm not afraid to tell people, as a dietitian, I tell people they can eat at fast food restaurants and they can order what they want and not have to beat themselves up. That's real world nutrition. All right, everyone, that is it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next Friday, as I am every week in your podcast feed. So take care and bye for now.